We're on.
There's a lot of feedback.
I got it.
Okay.
Next Wednesday, that's good. She said something. Draw something off of that wrong thing. Is that what that is? Oh, that's cool. I didn't know they were doing that. Our church does that.
Just one.
Okay, we will call to order the meeting for Shenandoah City Council held Wednesday, August 25th at 7 p.m. Call the roll and notice that everybody is here. We're going to stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance, and then if you would like to stay standing, we'll say a quick invocation. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. On the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Tonight we have the special privilege of having one of our residents present who is also a pastor at the Woodlands United Methodist Church. Just so happens that he's a pastor at the church that my family and I like to go to. He's over at the Loft, and that's Daniel Lumpy. I am going to put Daniel on the spot, and since he's more qualified to do this, I'm going to ask him to come up and give the invocation tonight. Daniel, would you mind doing that for us?
I'd love to.
Thank you.
Mayor Wheeler, since you put me on the spot, can I have 30 seconds of personal privilege?
Absolutely.
I just want to say thank you to all of you and all behind me that my family and I moved here a year ago, my wife and our two small daughters, and I hope you know how much a blessing this city is to us. That when you're doing your work, it may seem like it's small details, it may seem like it's so difficult, but know that you're making an impact. And in my life, my family's life, and the life of so many. So we say thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Let's pray. Gracious God, we do thank you for the gift of life. We thank you for the breath in our lungs, and we thank you for this city. We thank you for all that have made it what it is, for the residents, for the city council, for the mayor, for the law enforcement, for all on city staff. God, I give you thanks that you are making a city of hope and of love and of community. So God, tonight we ask that you will guide our thoughts, guide our discussions, guide our decisions. May they be glorifying to you. All these things we ask in the holy name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much for that, Daniel. If you've never gone to watch Daniel at the Loft, you're missing out. He dances around a lot, but he does it well. Okay, with that, we will move into item 5, which is citizens forum, and I did have one resident sign up to speak, which is Miss Esther Lum. Esther, if you want to approach the podium. And just state your name and speak into the mic for the folks on YouTube, please. Not your first rodeo. You know what you're doing.
Esther Lum, 31 South Emory Bend. I'm here to speak about the late hours for the mixed beverage permit for the Thai restaurant. And what concerns me is that I was here along with 3 other people last week at the Planning Commission, and we talked about these statistics, which I think you might have copies of, showing that from midnight to 3 a.m., 2/3 of fatal crashes involve drunk driving. So I noted that in the proposed ordinance that you have, there is a whereas clause, and it says, it notes the planning and zoning recommendation that you can approve the mixed beverage, but not the midnight to 2 a.m. sales. But when you read through the document, it says clearly that the ordinance is for this, approving the late night. So there's a built-in contradiction, and, it was concerning enough for me to say, I think I need to be here and just point that out, because it makes zero sense to me. And, again, these statistics are readily available from the Department of Transportation, the CDC. According to the CDC, Texas had the most, was the highest ranked state for drunk driving fatalities. And even above California, which I thought was amazing. So the numbers are there. I just don't think Shenandoah is a place where we want to have liquor sales going on from midnight to 2 a.m. There's not a lot of people out running around at that hour anyway. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Esther.
Thank you, Esther.
Thank you very much.
Okay, item 6, does anybody have anything right now during this council inquiry? Pass. Okay, I'm going to show favoritism to my kid's Shenandoah Sharks coach and move him up in the agenda item. He's actually here for different business. But I am going to move item 16 up to the next item and ask Coach Willis, coach of Willis ISD, if you have any questions, he's here. So item 16 is discussion and possible action to approve an agreement with Willis ISD.
Yes, Council. Since Joseph is not here tonight, I'm going to handle this. Willis ISD used our swimming facilities last year and have asked again to use them this year. We had no problems at all. It was a great relationship last year. We have presented them with an agreement. It is in essence $75 an hour for use of the pool. If you will recall, the Sharks are at $50 an hour. The difference is that Joseph tried to capture our real cost, and which includes some funds for equipment replacement and things, that because the Sharks are all in the city, that we don't charge. Other than that, the agreement is virtually identical to what we sign with the Sharks, and staff is recommending approval.
Thank you, Bill. Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the lease as submitted.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Fletcher. I have a second by Councilman Escato. Do we have any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. No, you're good. Thank you.
I just wanted to say thank you for the use of the pool last season.
Yeah, absolutely.
And tell you that Willis High School had one of its best seasons in, recent school history last year. The use of the pool, even though we went through that deep freeze and weren't able to even use the pool that month, last part of December and the first part of January, we still were able to break 8 school records 11 different times, which in my recollection for Willis High School has not happened. The team, the individuals that swam in the Shenandoah pool really enjoyed the atmosphere. And let me tell you, the parents of the students and the athletes that we helped train to compete in our new 6A competition were really appreciative and overwhelmed at the pictures they saw of our kids out there swimming in the water at 6 a.m. in the morning with the steam flowing off. So we thank you guys very much for the use of the pool. And we promise to take just as good as care of it. I treat it like it is my own.
Thank you.
Guys
Thank you
very
for
much.
coaching those young men and women.
Yeah.
Sir, thank you.
We're glad to have you all. Well, you know what they say, the water is better in Shenandoah.
I'll agree with that going around.
Okay, that brings us to at least one of my top 10 favorite items, which is item 7, presentation of the MDD monthly report.
My report popularity is dropping here apparently. So. Anyway, last month we approved the 21-22 MDD budget, and we also approved the new 5-year capital improvement plan. This evening, the MDD took no action on anything other than the general business. Of note, in the MDD report, on one of the back pages, is that the city of Conroe has tentatively approved funds for the David Memorial Drive Phase 2 and 3. So that was a big movement, and that's the most significant thing in the report. That
Yes,
was
they
huge.
have. Thank you for that. Outstanding. Okay, anybody got any questions for Councilman/Director Raymaker?
It's looking good.
Okay. Well, with that, then we will move into item 8, which is a presentation of a preliminary report regarding proposed zoning amendment for a special use permit for a mixed beverage permit on premises with late hours. The proposed zoning amendment is for Floyd Cuisine located at 1500 Research Forest Drive, Suite 240. This is a presentation only.
Correct, council, the request is for the mixed beverage permit for Floyd Cuisine located at 1500 Research Forest. The property is located within the neighborhood service zoning district. The special use permit would permit the property for mixed beverage on premise, which would allow for unsealed containers of wine, beer, ale, and malt liquor to be consumed on premise. The late hours portion of the request would permit the sale between midnight and 2 a.m. The Planning and Zoning Commission heard this application as well as comments from residents of the city in the surrounding area and considered this item at their regular meeting and unanimously recommended approval of the mixed use permit without late hours.
So, 2 questions. Well, number 1, the reason why it's listed here, even though P&Z didn't recommend late hours, is because they requested late hours, so we have to put it on the agenda the way they requested it, right?
Correct. The
Okay.
application for consideration for council this evening is a mixed beverage permit with late hours.
With late hours. What do they currently have
They have a beer and wine permit.
only,
Correct.
without late hours?
Correct.
And without mixed beverages, this is,
Right.
Correct.
yeah,
Yes.
that's the, yeah.
Right.
Don't they usually close like at 9 o'clock anyway? I'm
Yes.
confused as to why we're asking for late hours.
Maybe they want to change their hours, I don't know.
And then it was,
Okay. We'll move to item 9 then, which is a public hearing regarding the proposed zoning amendment for a special use permit for a mixed beverage permit on premises with late hours. Proposed zoning amendment is for Floyd Cuisine located at 1500 Research Forest Drive. We will open the public hearing at 7:12. Would anybody like to speak during the public hearing? Come on up. Absolutely.
I think the question that council
Fix your-
should,
fix
oh,
your
sorry.
name for YouTube. That's okay.
Esther Lum, 31 South Emory Bend. I think the question that council needs to ask is why was this late hours being asked for when they're currently closing at 9 o'clock? I didn't hear any discussion on that topic in the planning and zoning meeting. That's number 1. Because it's very suspicious, and most restaurants in the Woodlands close by 10. I mean, I haven't done an official survey, but I think that's a really key question. But also, again, I just emphasize there were 4 people that spoke, 2 of whom had not planned to speak at the meeting last week, and everyone unanimously objected to this. It's very suspect. So I leave you with that.
Thank you, Esther. Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak during the public hearing? Okay, well then we will close the public hearing at 7:14. Item 10, discussion and possible action to adopt following ordinance. An ordinance of the City of Shenandoah, Texas, amending the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 102, granting a special use permit for a mixed beverage on-premises permit with late hours for Floyd Cuisine located at 1500 Research Forest Drive, as stated in your agenda packet. Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the special use mixed beverage permit without late hours.
So
That's usually Mike's.
I have them. It actually took much longer to get out than I thought it would. So I have a motion by Councilman Fletcher to approve the mixed beverage portion of the permit excluding late hours. I have a second by Councilman McLeod. Do we have any discussion?
I'd like to hear from council, but can we strip the late hours from the permit as it's written?
Yeah, we've done that.
Yes.
We've done
I
that.
mean, doesn't mean that they have to reapply for it. They may say, no, we don't
That's
want it.
what I'm asking.
But we've already, yeah, but I think what we're doing is we're approving what we will let them have. They can always come back and reapply for a mixed beverage, not late hours.
Well,
Well,
the
no.
late hours is an endorsement on the mixed beverage permit.
So they wouldn't have to reapply.
So it's a separate.
Okay.
Correct, yeah.
Unless they legitimately wanted to try again. and
Correct,
we-
yes.
We
Yeah.
could reject them again, but, yeah.
And we would reject them again.
And I appreciate you coming to council tonight
Absolutely.
immensely, Esther. This council's not interested in having late hours that close to our residents. I will say that from a mixed beverage standpoint, it'd be unfair of us to not grant them mixed beverage considering they have so many other restaurants right in that same area that already offer it, so.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion, a second. We've had discussion. Do we need any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion to grant the mixed beverage portion of the special use permit is approved. Late hours is denied, 5-0.
And the ordinance that the mayor signs will reflect that change.
Thank you. Item 11, presentation of a final report regarding a variance to section 98-158.
Mayor, I'm going to interrupt you for a second. I'm going to step out through items 11 through 13 for conflict of interest.
Understood. Thank you, Councilman. Once again, item 11, presentation of a final report regarding a variance to section 98-158, tree replacement of the City of Shenandoah Vegetation Ordinance requiring new tree planting on a site that does not meet the minimum 50% canopy area coverage. The proposed variance is for 19043 David Memorial Drive, Shenandoah.
Council, this is a request to a variance to our current landscape ordinance. CISD is adding a teacher training facility to the north side of the stadium, and that site is currently providing a little over 8,000 square feet of canopy credits. Through discussion and vetting with the planning and zoning process, there was some replacement trees on site that the developer has gone back and assessed and has offered to replace those trees as well. So what we're looking at for this request is CISD and with the new teacher training center will be requesting to install 12,057 square feet of canopy credits rather than the required 50%, which would be 23,802 square feet of canopy credits, leaving the deficiency of a little over 11,000 canopy credits. The way the ordinance reads, a new site not meeting the canopy credits has to provide those credits, which is why CISD was asking, or why the staff asked CISD to meet the 50% canopy credits. There is an option in the current vegetation ordinance that CISD could pay into the tree fund for the deficiencies on site. With the provided per plans plus the replacement trees, the deficiency amounts to $44,043.75. The properties in the OC office corridor zone. There is a correction to the agenda report. The Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed this at their regular meeting, and it was not an unanimous approval. It was a 4-1 vote. Commissioner C was not against not against the reduction in canopy credits, but his comments were that the landscape percentage was a small amount of the contract price, and he just didn't feel comfortable approving the variance based off of that aspect. And there were some renderings in the agenda pack to show where the placement trees were, the project scope of work, and the location of those new plantings.
Is that the correct map, Jackie?
That'll show the site area, the scope of work where the training center is situated at.
And so outside on what would be the north side of that road that goes next to the training center, those trees, what you're saying is those trees are the new proposed trees by the developer?
Correct. What we did is we looked at the site as if the teacher training center was its own independent project. I think what we didn't do is we didn't look at the total site, including the NAT, the football stadium, and all of the parking. We took the square footage based off of the scope of work for the teacher training center, which is the 50% planting requirements was that 23,802 square feet listed in the agenda pack. So this is not bringing the entire CISD site up into compliance with the 50%. It's the site that is pertaining to the teacher training center.
So if I'm doing my math right here, it looks like they took out about 12 trees that were previously there to put the teacher training center in. Is that about, did we count the trees they took out by any chance?
I don't recall seeing any removal of trees.
Well, there would have had to have been, because where that training facility is, there used to be a row of trees there. Yeah, there used to be a row of trees.
Mr. Boyd is a representative, and he's just advised that some of those trees were relocated, but not including into the count here.
So, Mr. Boyd, do you have any idea how many trees there were previously prior to putting up this teacher training facility?
Yes, sir. I do. Actually.
Mayor, you want to go do that in public hearing?
I think it's part of the presentation.
It's up to you.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not going with the plans.
I don't know how old the Google Maps satellite is, but I can pull that up.
I did. That's
Oh,
why
you did?
I was
Okay.
I counted them.
No problem.
So we originally had to relocate about 12 trees, existing trees. So those are trees that were in parking lot islands before the natatorium, or for the teacher training center, and those 12 were moved, in essence. And then we came back with our understanding when we left our meeting with the city redevelopment meeting. We thought that we needed to meet the 10% landscaping ordinance for the new building, for that square footage. And then so that we provided an additional 29 new trees.
Okay.
On top of what was originally on the site.
Gotcha. Thank you, Mr. Boyd.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anything else, Jackie?
No, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. With that, we'll move into item 12, which is a public hearing regarding a variance to section 98-158, tree replacement of the City of Shenandoah Vegetation Ordinance requiring new tree planting on a site that does not meet the minimum 50% canopy area coverage. Proposed variance is for 19043 David Memorial Drive. We will open the public hearing at 7:23. Would anybody like to speak during the public hearing?
If there's any additional information that I can help provide before you go, come up.
Thank you.
Like that, sir?
We'll wait and see if anybody asks.
Yes.
Okay, we will close the public hearing then at 7:24. Okay, item 13, discussion and possible action to adopt the following ordinance. An ordinance of the City of Shenandoah, Texas, amending the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 98, to approve a variance to Section 98-158 tree replacement of the City of Shenandoah Vegetation Ordinance, requiring new tree planting on a site that does not meet the minimum 50% canopy area coverage for 19043 David Memorial Drive, Shenandoah, Texas, as stated in your agenda packet. Do we have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the variance and the option of payment for the deficiency in the tree canopy coverage as stated in the packet.
So you would like to accept the variance, but you also want to accept a payment in the amount of?
what was it, Jackie?
40,000 or something.
40,000 something, whatever.
44,000.
Right, that was the amount deficient to meet the 50% credit.
Correct.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion by Councilman Brock. We have a second by Councilman Raymaker. Do we have any discussion?
Just to clarify for the council here, the recommendation from P&Z was to actually do the reduction in the Canopy credits and not have any obligation to pay into the tree fund for the deficiencies. The reason it's listed on here is if the variance isn't granted and they can't find a place for the additional tree plantings, there is the option that they could pay into the tree fund.
It's an either or, in other words. Or kind of what the spirit of it was, the either or, according to planning and zoning. Either give the variance or they would pay the deficiency.
Yes, if they didn't get, if they didn't get the variance, then they would either pay the deficiency or try to find somewhere on site where they could run additional irrigation and new plantings to meet the 50% credit.
I'm of the opinion that if there were only 12 trees there to begin with, and they relocated the 12 trees and then added another 29 trees, I mean, it's just my opinion, but I think they went, in the right direction for sure. And I don't know that we need the money from CISD. So I would be in favor of granting them the variance, maybe spelling out based on the number of trees that they said that they replanted and added. So maybe we spell out with the understanding that there's, what is that? Do my math for me, Ted. That's 42 trees. Is that right? Yeah, 41 trees.
What? Let me ask Jackie. Jackie, I thought they were replacing 17, Jackie, I thought they were also replacing 17 trees on David Memorial Drive that had died earlier to fill those in.
Correct, yeah. So there's a replacement count in there. There's a provided per the plans that are in the agenda pack, plus there's an additional, they've come back to P&Z and said, well, we found some on site we can replace. And P&Z, along with their approval, said, yes, you put what you provided per plans and the replacement trees to bring the count a little bit higher than the original 8,000 square feet provided, which provides about 12,057 square feet of canopy credits. And that was the recommendation from P&Z, to give the variance and have CISD provide 12,057 square feet of canopy credits.
So we replaced the 12 trees, added 29 trees, and then replaced 13 dead trees. Is that the long and the short of it? Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Correct if I'm wrong, Debbie. Yes, we relocated some trees, then we brought in new landscaping to meet 50% of the new building. We did offer variance at that point. Through the process with the planning and zoning, they'd asked us to go back and assess all the trees on site, which we did, and we counted 17 dead trees that needed to be replaced. And per their direction and recommendation, we came back with an offer of replacing those with a 3-inch caliber tree, which in about 3.5 years, those will be about 6-inch caliber, which would be extremely close to the 50% originally required. That's it.
I don't think we need the $40,000 from the school district.
Well, I'm not a big proponent of the buy here, pay here thing anyway, but irregardless, I don't think we need to look at the entity that's paying for it, because I'm sure they didn't look at us and say,
that's true.
It's the city of Shenandoah, so we'll give you a discount on the Stag Bowl, because I'm pretty sure that got increased the second year. So, but at the same time, I don't like the buy here, pay here thing. Just me personally.
Any more discussion? Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to grant the variance for the tree canopy and require a $44,000 and some change. I don't know exactly what it is, but as stated in your agenda packet.
So my reasoning on that was that when they originally built the Wood Forest Stadium, there was no tree canopy coverage in effect. There is now, And with the spirit of that, I thought that if they went to a 10% canopy coverage, that the money would, I hear you all, and I see that there's probably not, so I'll amend the motion to just accept the variance.
I would second that.
Okay, so I have an amended motion by Councilman Brought to accept the variance for the tree canopy. I have a second by Councilman Moscato. Do we have any discussion?
Yeah, I was trying to recollect that when they put the natatorium in, that there doesn't seem to be a big tree canopy over there.
Right, there was no requirement, Ron.
There was no.
Time.
There was none. And there's nothing in the PDD that says they've got to. Okay. I looked at the language there as well.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 3-1 to grant the variance for the tree canopy. Okay, let's move to item 14, which is discussion and possible action to adopt following ordinance, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Shenandoah, amending section 74-288 regarding recycle rates for single-family residences. Welcome back, Councilman McLeod.
Council, this is something that we do every year because our contract has a built-in 4% increase. For added transparency for the public, we've reflected the previous rate plus the increased rate to clarify what that will be. Do you have any questions?
Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Raymaker to approve. I have a second by Councilman Brought. Do we have any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Item 15, discussion and possible action to adopt the following ordinance, an ordinance of the City of Shenandoah, Texas, amending the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 38-181, to change the definition of a junked vehicle and to reduce the time a vehicle can remain inoperable, providing servability and providing for an effective date.
Council, this is coming back to you a second time. The first time we discussed this ordinance, we had a separate ordinance that dealt with cars up on jacks and cars parked in grass. Council had said, can we come back and simplify the one ordinance that we already have in place? And I looked at that, and we can, without addressing cars parked on grass, we can simply amend section 38-181, subpart 3B, to change what was an inoperable vehicle for 30 days, and I put in arbitrarily, based on a weekend, 48 hours. But by changing subpart 3B to something, we can make one simple change to our ordinance that would effectively, I think, or I hope, accomplish what we're trying to do, and that is not have cars just forever sitting up on jacks and being repaired. So that is the simplest solution, and that's open for discussion tonight.
So do I have a motion?
So just get discussion started, I move that we approve the ordinance regarding junk vehicles.
So I have a motion by Councilman Fletcher to approve. I have a second by Councilman McLeod. Sounds like we have some discussion.
So in the definition section of a disabled vehicle, or what determines a disabled vehicle, if resident A has a vehicle, the registration's good in it, and he drives in, coming home on the way, his transmission goes out, gets it in first gear, he does get to a driveway, he can't afford to replace it, but he leaves it there. So after 72 hours, how is any enforcement officer of the City of Shenandoah going to tell if that's a disabled vehicle?
Actually, it's worse than that. If he gets it into his own driveway, it's only 48 hours. That's a confusing part to me.
Which
I'm
is
not
one we're
quite-
gonna,
Yeah.
that's one of the things I was gonna address, yeah. Okay. Definitely don't like that.
Why do we?
I'm a nay. So,
Well, and I can tell you the reason for the wording was, number one, simplicity. Obviously, we're not going by starting cars. The purpose of the ordinance was to take care of cars up on jacks so that our code enforcement officer driving by can see that this car has been up on jacks more than, in my example, 48 consecutive hours.
so don't you think we should add language stating that, so it's not up for interpretation?
Well, that goes back to a more detailed, complicated amendment. What I brought tonight was the suggestion last time is, could we make a very simple change to an existing ordinance? And yes, I can fix all of that easily. It's just a more complicated change is all.
I agree, it's more complicated.
I agree with Councilman Broad. I think the term inoperable leaves a lot of room for complications.
Yeah, I think that we probably need to tighten that up a little bit as far as defining that, and Councilman Broad made a great example of that. I think if we can use terms such as dismantled or in ill repair or something that's going to define a car being under.
Visually inoperable, or, I mean.
Correct.
Yeah.
I can fix that.
Right.
The other question is how long?
Well, I don't think the residence should be shorter than what.
Well, that was
would be on public
public
property.
street,
that was
yeah.
the problem,
I think
yeah.
that-
Well, I think 72 would be sort of you can imagine your Friday night transmission goes out or something breaks, right? Or I jack the car up Saturday, think it's gonna be an easy fix, realize I need a part that's only at the dealer. Well, the dealer's not open till Monday. So 48 hours isn't gonna even get me, you know.
Yeah, I was thinking along the same lines,
Yeah.
that the time frame wasn't long enough, that as somebody who used to actually fix my own cars.
Yeah.
I don't think it's unreasonable to give you 2 weekends and maybe 10 days to affect that repair, just to be fair to the people that are working on it now. I mean, if you're, working on a car and it's a professional race car, maybe you should have 2 rear end axles so that you can replace them whenever you need to. But I just think it may be a little bit more time. So not the 30 days, but somewhat less than that. But the hours just seem to be a little bit tight.
Well, and the other thing is get it back down. I mean, I've shared with our attorney that I do have a friend in Shenandoah who frequently works on a truck. And when he's working on it, it's clear. I mean, the whole driveway is full of truck parts and stuff. But before you go to bed at night, it's all put back together.
Right.
It's put up at the front of the driveway. You'd never know. And that's the thing. It stays clean and neat unless the work is actually actively being done. Otherwise, it's all put away. But yeah, I would like a little bit better definition of inoperable. I think 72 to me is sort of a minimum. I don't know that we need to go beyond that, particularly if we can be clear on what inoperable means. I mean, missing parts and.
I will define it. What I'd like to do is define, for this case, inoperable as up on jacks or the wheels off, so it's easily visible from the
Right.
street.
Okay, I think if we could do that, that would be useful.
Yeah, I didn't want anything where, your car's been sitting in the driveway. It's not dismantled so that neighbors aren't saying, well, gee, that car's not going anywhere, it must be inoperable, so let's
Exactly.
invite the code enforcement person to
Right.
poke at it. That I don't want at all.
I think the spirit behind this was the cars that are completely dismantled and are all over the driveway for long periods of time.
Extended periods of time, yeah.
Again, I'm not big on, the spirit was never to be that a homeowner can't work on their car for extended periods of time. It just needs to be in a orderly fashion that, as Councilman McLeod said, his friend works on his car all the time. He'll dismantle it, but he makes sure that it's presentable, for his neighbors, being neighborly, before the weekend's out or before the night's up. And I think that was more the spirit behind this, is that there were several, not just one person or one place, but several around the community that have their cars in disrepair. And it is unsightly, and it does invite, people to come in and, it does invite crime. People are going to come in and take parts off the car that they can grab when things are up like that. And, only takes 30 seconds to rip out a catalytic converter. So, if it's already up on jacks, it just makes it that much easier.
Is that the only requirement that we want to use for inoperable is up on jacks?
No.
Because I've driven around the city and
Well,
there are
and
other
not,
vehicles that are
our
inoperable.
tires not, if the tires are not on the ground.
Yeah.
Well, what I'm saying is I've driven around the city and there are other vehicles that the tires are on the ground, but I can tell you can tell by looking at that vehicle, it's been there for a long time and it hadn't moved.
Well,
Flat tires,
that's
cracked
going
tires,
back to
dry
the,
dry.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's where you have to come in with, if the tires are flat. Again, I'm not trying to make people move things off their property or move it around on their property. But if it's not in a presentable state,
Maybe we ask Bill to.
it's kind of why
some-
Stephanie and I talked about the inoperable in terms of that covers a car that's been sitting there and all four tires are flat. It's not up on jacks, but it's been there for a month and all four tires are flat. That's where inoperable covers that. As I went back, again, or we can define in some way, up on jacks, the tires not, no tires on it.
Does making it vague like that though does that make it harder to enforce?
There's always going to be there'll always be some situation. What happens when 3 tires are full and one's flat for a month? I mean, but generally, the cars that I think we're talking about, all 4 tires would probably be flat.
And we are also talking about, to be clear, cars visible from the street.
Correct.
And that also, I think, that's another point here, is if your car's in the garage, you got a classic car you're not messing with, it's operable or it's not operable, I don't care, if it's in the garage, that's fine.
Your business.
That's your business.
well, we have a neighbor down the way that has a Rolls Royce and very rarely drives it, but it's in his driveway with a car cover on it. I wouldn't determine that to be inoperable. Probably is, but.
Yeah, I think we need to specify the inoperable part before we go any further with the
I would
ordinance.
agree.
From a code, when I was talking with Stephanie, the easiest thing from code enforcement standpoint, the easiest definition is either it's up on jacks for X number of hours, or the tires are off the ground for X number of hours. And in staff, we talked about what do we do with flat tires? Because, occasionally someone's got a child off at college and there's a car sitting there and the tire's flat. It's really operable. It runs and they just haven't they don't use it, so there's no reason till child gets home from college to go get the tire fixed. Do we want to regulate that? And the thought was, no. The thought was, what we really want to regulate are the cars that appear day in and day out to be being worked on and just up off the ground.
Okay, so why don't we just add that then? We could say, 3 is inoperable and/or is up on jacks and has remained inoperable and/or up on jacks for more than, and then that way it gives us,
90,
that way it
72
defines the up on
yeah.
jacks, but it also gives us a little bit of wiggle room if all 4 tires are flat and there's weeds growing up through it.
Yes.
And I would, from my liking, I would like for both of them to be 72.
I think 72 is the way to go.
Okay.
I'm good with 72, 96. I think a week's too long.
So what about, and this, I was going to say this earlier, what about an extension? What about 72, and then they can request an extension for another 72?
Because they can call us, again, parts do.
Well, I think they do, right, and I think that, our code enforcement is gonna work with somebody if they're trying to get it done and they're missing a part or they're missing that.
Yeah, they come by and they gotta go, look, it's a Ford part. On the other hand, if something breaks, and I know it's gonna be 2 weeks, put the wheels back on and put it back on the ground.
Right.
I mean,
Well, the city will work with,
Yeah.
with people. The goal is compliance. And I know that in some particular cases that we've seen, Stephanie has worked with the resident or the business owner to gain compliance, whatever that may involve. It's not an immediate, demand. It's,
right. Let's do 72, and then if that allows us some.
I think timing's important because, that's part of the issue that we have right now with code enforcement is there's so much time that's allotted in our ordinances that it appears nobody's doing anything, but we've already made contact and now people are complaining, but we already made contact over a week ago and we still have 3 weeks left. So, and notoriously, the 29th day and the 11th hour or 23rd hour, all of a sudden it gets fixed. So I think timing is the key in all of our ordinances, not to get off subject, but timing would be the key in this one in particular.
And again, this just gives us an opportunity to begin a conversation to make sure things are being addressed. Because if the response is, leave me alone, I got 21 days left or 25 days left, and you go, okay, I mean, what are you gonna say? So.
Okay, so currently, we have a motion on the floor to approve by Councilman Fletcher with a second by Councilman McLeod. Are we ready to vote?
You gotta make the change.
Or table.
Yeah, I was going to say I can withdraw my motion to approve and move to table.
Second.
Okay, so I have a motion by Councilman Fletcher to table. I have a second by Councilman McLeod. Do we have any discussion? Only that I think we're all in the same agreement that Bill's going to come back with some new wording for us.
Yeah.
Charlie, how do you feel about?
I'm fine with that.
Okay with the definition and?
Until I see the language,
Right,
I'm a
well,
no.
of course.
All in favor of tabling?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Okay, we already had item 16, so we'll move straight into item 17, which is discussion regarding items from the August 12th, 2021 budget workshop.
Mayor and council, as you see in your agenda pack, this is a discussion-only item to discuss some of the items that were discussed at the budget workshop held on August 12th. I broke it up into four parts to open discussion on pertaining to those issues. The first part is the department operating budgets. CVB had a budget surplus of $62,000. Water sewer had a budget surplus of $493,000 after projects are taken out. General fund, we did discuss, and we had the Encode RMS system was listed as a capital, but since we're doing the 5-year schedule on it to keep with cost savings, and so it wouldn't be an immediate hit to this budget year, that would now move into operating because it's a contract at that point and it's a software purchase contract. So with that being said, if we remain with that 0.1737 tax rate, it now puts you into about $47,000 deficit for your operating budget. And then I also provided, if we keep the 1799 rate, you'll see that it does adjust, and then we'll have a little bit of a surplus at 26,000. Going into the next point, capital, is there any questions with the operating? Sorry, before I move on. Moving on to the second bullet point will be capital projects. You'll see the capital projects that were approved under general fund. These are all coming from available cash. The only one that's still pending is the desktop virtualization. I did email everyone Chris's breakdown. I would prefer we hold that off until the September 8th meeting before we adopt the budget, just because I'm not sure, and I'm not going to act like I know what desktop virtualization is. So that will be decided at that point. And then you'll see the water sewer projects, the treatment plant phase 1, that's with the Texas Development Board loan, and then everything else is coming out of the budget surplus. So going back up to point 3 relates to point 1 as well, with the current deficit we're sitting at. So this is about the tax rate. Currently, I have everything set at 1737, but with that deficit, we need to figure out how to get into a not deficit. So I did attach an exhibit to this agenda pack that shows you the difference. Oops, sorry. That would show you the difference in revenue and also based on the average home value, what the dollar change from going from the NNR to the now, if we go up to 1799. So I'll open that for discussion. Staff just needs to have an idea of what we wanted to go with, because I do have to get everything published soon.
So it's a difference of $24.05.
Yes.
Did we ever circle back to take a look at the convenience fees? Did we get a better breakdown on that?
No, so I was trying to figure it out and talking with we're going out for a bank RFA. I was talking to the consultant and they said that there's could be other options. Once we get into that discussion, we're currently developing the RFA. I have not published it yet. So at this point, I'm just going to remain as a placeholder and then we can revisit it. In the general fund, there's not much. It's mostly water sewer for the convenience fees.
Yeah, I think at this point, it's just prudent to maintain the 17.99 tax rate.
I agree.
Not to increase it, just hold at 17.99. We know we've added over $300,000 to our operating budget this year. I've talked with Troy and PD. They'd like to add another officer next year. That's another $110,000 to our operating budget coming on next year that we already, we held off this year because we knew we were doing this adjustment. And I just think that's the prudent thing to do.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, because a major factor in the NNR rate is appraisal values that we don't control. And the average over the last 5 years has been virtually 5% increase in appraisal values. And the NNR does not include any inflation. So they expect us to live on the same dollar amount as we did the previous year. We don't have enough new development to offset like the county does. The county they're going to be having plenty of new development, so they have the money, but we're locked in, and I've had some discussions with the comptroller's office. I've had discussions with Weinbarger, who's our tax attorney, and with Steve Toth as well. It's like, what can we do legislatively to make sure that we don't get these types of increases as frequently? I think that their spirit was good, but they didn't look at it close enough, and it's impacting us.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate. I mean, our national leadership is causing all kinds of issue with inflation. Inflation's taken off. We know cost of things are rising. And this doesn't even come close. So.
And we're not voting today, but
Right.
for that discussion, I think just the fact that it doesn't include the inflation, and
Right.
all our services have gone up. Asking our people to not take raises, that'd all be very difficult to do.
This doesn't require a vote. I do need to have a general consensus for the legal posting that I have to do, so I have the verbiage correct.
Can we take a vote?
So I'm still against going to the 1799. We have the money to do it. We had a surplus last year of $420,000, which more than offset our spending increase this year. I don't see why we can't do it. I know the view is only increases $24, but you know what? As small as that may be, that's how taxes increase. And yes, it may not be increasing our existing tax rate of 17.99, but at the end of the day, it is. I understand logically inflation. I understand the points that have been made. But I also understand we have $420,000 surplus from last year's budget into this year's budget. And we have more than enough in reserves and our general fund to cover anything. I mean, we just went through the biggest crisis that we've seen in decades with businesses shutting down and everything else. And to come through with, like I say, a $420,000 surplus at the end of the year, that more than offsets the deficit that we're taking on here. And, you know, we have this discussion with water rates that would only increase $20, but I can tell you my bill increased a lot more than that. And I'm using the same amount of water as I did last year. Probably less because I had 2 people that left my house. So I'm not in favor of going through a public hearing and keeping the $17.99 rate.
So Lisa, what do you need from us?
So we have to do the public hearing regardless, just because of that vote on the August 11th saying that we could go above the NNR. It automatically triggers that public hearing. Necessarily doesn't mean that you have to go with the $17.99. That's how it's drafted currently. For the ordinance, I just need to know what rate we kind of want to go with during that approval process, so I have all the ordinances up to date because of the M&O and INS split I have to do. That's just really where we're at right now. Just to touch on the $420,000 surplus, that is going to cover the new operated 180 days technically
I understand
per
that,
ordinance.
but we're mincing words here. I mean, there's $420,000 was left over last year. If all that went to what these costs are, there's more than enough in our general fund to cover that requirement of reserves. So it's in its simplest form. I don't want to complicate it for those that are watching. In the simplest form, we had $420,000 come in, less than what we spent in overage this year in funding our police department the way that it needs to be and other departments. So in the simplest format, yeah, $420,000 came in. We had our deficit in spending, and there's more than enough in our general fund to cover our 180-day requirement.
The second question, just for internal zero-based, the best budgeting practices is to always have a net of zero or a surplus. So that puts us in a deficit. I can't guarantee that the auditors won't, because you're never supposed to supplement your operating with reserves, or you should always net at the end.
And that's not
Based on your revenue
sustainable.
expense. Huh?
That's not sustainable.
So
Yeah.
that's
You don't want to
correct.
get
It's
into
not
that practice of supplementing your operating
I
with.
agree.
Yeah. So the other issue is that, and this is just me giving information, this is not me trying to sway any opinions, but if you lower the new revenue rate, if we don't have new development next year to offset it, it's going to lower again. Because the appraisal will go up. So in order to meet that the zero delta, basically, they're going to have to lower the rate again. That's the only thing that you're running into that
Because it'll likely go up
situation.
another 5%, as it's been averaging over the last 5 years.
Yeah. So next year, your tax rate, the NNR could be
Well, I mean, we
1701.
can go on a lot of what-if discussions, but
I'm
we're not-
just-
Well, I understand that, but you're given a what-if, and that's not necessarily what's going to happen next year. If we're going to give what-ifs, then we have to give what-ifs on properties that are being developed that aren't on our tax scrolls, and what that's going to equal in tax revenues to us as well. But we're not going to go off what-ifs. So I understand what you're saying, and I understand the points that are being made. I'm still objecting to that, because we're not saying that we have to sustain that, obviously. But again, this is how new taxes are created, and I'm not for that. And even though it's $24 this year, every year it's going to be something.
Well, I'll say this. In general, I am not a fan of government asking its citizens for money that it doesn't need. So along the spirit of what you're saying. Having said that, I'm also not a fan of going into a budget knowing that you're losing that you're in a negative. So kind of my thought process here is we sort of either need to decide we're going to go with the same 1799 rate that we're at currently and accept the fact that we're asking the residents for a little bit more money to pay for the new services that we're putting into this year's budget, or we need to go back to the budget and carve out $47,288.47. Now, I don't get to vote on the tax rate, but I can certainly go back to the budget and start carving stuff out. So I think what council has to decide is if you want the budget the way it sits right now, do you want a tax rate of 1799, or would it make more sense so that we can not tax our residents as much money? And again, I'm not against your philosophy there. Then would it make more sense to go back to the budget and say, do we have $47,288.47 worth of new services that we can cut out and not deprive our residents of something that they need?
Lisa, correct me if I'm wrong then. It's not just the 47, we have to have additional debt service dollars as well, so it's more like $73,000.
Well, it would put your deficit at 47, but it does lower 73,000 overall, yes. You're in a deficit of 47 because there was like 14,000 surplus before we moved that 55,000 up to operated. But the difference between the 1737 and the 1799, which I actually have, let me pull it up real quick.
Have we firmed up our fire contract yet?
No, so I emailed Chief Buck today and I have not heard back. I'm hoping he gives me a call soon. Gives you a difference of 73,000.
That's is it,
The difference between 1799 and 1737.
what percentage does NDB pay again?
80%.
I thought it was 80%, so. I think we were pretty aggressive. We cut a lot of stuff out of our budget. We worked really hard. We have a very minimal number of capital projects this year. And I think the ones that are there are ones that are definitely needed. We're taking care of the police, the covered and lit parking. We're taking care of safety and the Dave Memorial streetlights. We really need to do that stormwater mapping. I think Bly would, and taking care of this backup generator. I don't know that we have $47,000 that we can go dig out of the budget per se. I think all of us are fairly conservative in our spending, and I think everybody left something on the table that they would have liked to have had. I know I left some things on the table because we wanted to keep our budget as lean as possible. So that's my position. I think.
For that reason, Mike, I'm also in favor of the 1799.
As am I.
I'd like to see where we're at with the fire contract.
Just to update council on that, the Woodlands is still talking internally about that, so it's just moving along slowly.
So that's a calendar year contract, right?
Correct, it's up in December.
So Lisa needs
You
to
have
have
what you
some
need, Lisa?
direction.
Pardon?
You have what you need?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
The
You
majority
have, you have the general direction?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. I think
Okay.
it's over here.
Then with that, let's move to item 18, which is discussion and possible action to approve purchases from the equipment replacement fund.
I'm so sorry. Let me pull this up real quick. It's hard doing two jobs. Sorry. Mayor and council, this agenda is to expense funds from the equipment replacement fund. As you'll see in your agenda report, my goodness, where is it? So sorry, guys. As you'll see, there's two purchases that are requested out of the equipment replacement fund. The first one's the skid loader. This was discussed during budget workshop. There was available funds left over from equipment replacement funding that was for the salt pool system replacement that will no longer be used for that replacement. So it's recommended that we reallocate that to just purchase a skid loader. Joseph's very confident he can find a used unit within that price range. $37,026.77 is not the exact amount that we spent. Whatever is not spent, we can throw back into general fund. The second is a data domain backup storage device. This is the backup storage device at the water tower. Our current unit is out of support and cannot be upgraded to be compatible with our backup software. Chris got this initial quote from Tab Data Systems. He did email me. The representative that he was discussing with did not include any warranties or service agreement on top of that. That's just for the unit. So he is actually modifying that to request $8,000 out of the equipment replacement instead of the $6,100.
Okay, do I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve these purchases.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman McLeod, I have a second by Councilman Ramaker. Do we have any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Item 19, discussion and possible action regarding general fund surplus and reserves funds.
Mayor and council, this was discussed also during the budget workshop. Based on the final operating expense numbers in the tax rate, I've provided a chart that shows what is required for the 180-day reserve fund. With the 1799 tax rate, what's required to be put in would be $499,016. We did have the budget surplus of $420,270 last year. That just will require another additional $78,746 to come from available cash into that reserve fund. This is based on 180-day operational costs.
So the idea is that the entire $420,000 that we had is now going into the 180 days and then we're going to have to take another $78,000 from our available cash to make sure we keep maintaining that 180 days. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And that's a restricted fund, so it would need council's approval to expend anything out of that restrictive 180-day reserve fund.
Correct.
Do I have a motion?
Are you going to bring this back with,
I'll bring it back now that we have a final.
since we have the final numbers?
Mhm.
Okay.
We'll just approve it before we approve the budget.
Okay.
So then I need somebody to table it.
Do I make a motion to table this?
I have a motion by Councilman McLeod to table. I have a second by Councilman Scotto. Do we have any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0 to table. Item 20, discussion and possible action to approve the minutes of the June 23rd, 2021 regular meeting.
Motion they be approved as read.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Brought. I have a second by Councilman Ramaker. Do we have any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Item 21, discussion and possible action to ratify the accounts payable for July 2021. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
I have a motion by Councilman Fletcher.
Ratify the account.
Second.
I have a second by Councilman Brought. Do we have any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Item 22, our second citizens forum. Would anybody like to speak during the second citizens forum? Nobody? Then that moves us to item 23, which is our city administrator updates. Kathy?
Council, I just have a few tonight. On the East Siphon Project, which is over in the Denton Dam area is how we refer to it. This is on schedule. The siphon was installed under the gas line last week. Concrete work for the inlets is happening this week, and the project is nearly complete. So that's good news.
I
That'll
got
help
a
a lot.
really nice picture of that from John this week.
Yeah. The thoroughfare plan. The city's requested changes were incorporated into the plan. We were notified last week, and that plan was presented to Commissioners Court yesterday and adopted. So that's also good news for the city. And then finally, you all may be aware of the sign that was placed by Howard Hughes on Research Forest between the bank and Killens. And the message opposes incorporation. It's my understanding that those signs are in various places throughout the Woodlands. The city has made contact with the Hughes Corporation, And we're looking at the sign ordinance, and we're seeing if we can have that sign moved outside the city. So in case you hear any complaints or questions about the sign, we are working on it.
Thanks, Kelly.
Does that qualify, Bill, as a political sign?
Yes.
So then they have a time frame.
They have a time frame which they have complied with, and I'm going to tell you, I believe that it is a political sign, and if it's on property they own, we're unable to regulate.
Except for the size of it, which I
Yes.
think that size is bigger than what we allow.
That's what we're
Okay.
looking at
Okay.
now, Stephanie's looking at, but their ability to place some sign political in nature is permitted.
Correct.
I think it's 36 square feet.
Yeah. 32?
Yeah.
And that's all I've got.
Thank you, Kathy. Okay, well then with that, we will move to council inquiry, and we will start with Councilman Brock.
I'm good.
You're good tonight. You are always good. Councilman McLeod.
I think I'm all good tonight as well.
Councilman McLeod is also good. Councilman Fletcher.
We're good.
Councilman
Pass.
Raymaker.
Pass.
Wow, okay. Well, with that, then I guess I'll have to pass too. So, thanks, everybody, for coming. We will adjourn the meeting at 8:11.
Look at how close you were, Bill.